we all have had those energy vampires that just kind of suck us dry. That's not what our intuition is there to serve us with. And so by understanding that my intuition is coming in with the highest, most loving, most beneficial you know messages for the greatest good, that you can already feel the difference there. And that's what's going to come in, because that is what you are asking for. And they will not give you anything that you are not asking for.
Welcome to Tried and True with a Dash of Woo, where we blend rock solid tips with a little bit of magic. I'm Renee Bowen, your host, life and business coach, and professional photographer at your service. We are all about getting creative, diving into your business, and playing with manifestation over here. So, are you ready to get inspired and have some fun? Let's dive in. Hey friends, welcome back to Tried and True with a Dash of Woo. I'm your host, Renee Bowen. I hope you guys are all having an amazing week. I am thick and deep into tax season at the time of this recording, and I'm almost done getting that done. So I hope you guys are also getting through that. All my fellow small business owners, just everybody in general, right? Like you can't really escape it no matter who you are, but when you run a business and you're a corporation, things like that, it's a lot. So thankfully, I have an amazing accountant. If you guys are looking for an amazing accountant, by the way, and you need someone who specializes in business, let me know. I'm happy to introduce you to my people because they're awesome. A couple of things real quick I wanted to chat with you about before we jump into my guest today, who is amazing, and you're going to love, love, love what we talk about. I wanted to just sort of mention that I do have one more spot open, only one at this moment, for one-on-one support for coaching. My packages are 3-month or 6-month. I don't like to do one-off calls unless it's kind of an emergency. So like definitely do reach out if you need something and you need help. I may be able to get you in. I'm happy to help if I can. But most of the time, I want to work with you in more of a long-term capacity. I feel like 3-month is like the minimum amount of time that it takes for us to like really create change and dig in. 6-month is really ideal. Right now I'm working with a handful of people for 6 months, and it's really awesome. Like we really get to, like I said, dig into all of the different pieces. But again, your business is a reflection of you and how you feel. Like, so it's more than just strategy. It's more than just, SEO and content and things like that. We go really specific and deep into what you need help with. And there's a decent amount of coaching involved in this for me anyway. Like that's sort of how I prefer to operate as a coach. Yeah, I can tell you what to do for your business and I can give you business insights and strategies, but if you don't feel good, if you are dealing with a lot of other stuff going on and some unconscious programming, you're not going to really be able to access those trainings in the way that I would like you to. So that's why I life coach you as well. So if you're looking for something like that and that feels aligned, definitely reach out, book a call. The link is below in the show notes. We do need to chat first to see if we'd be a good fit. And if we're not, I'll point you in a direction that I think would better serve you. I also had some people asking about Elevate, which is my 6-month program, my container for photographers. And I'm not opening that back up until June, but there's a wait list that you can hop on to get information first. It's a really amazing program. I'll link it below just so you can see, like read more about it if you're interested. I do limit the number of people I accept into that program. And there's also an intake form to fill out because I've been working with most of the women in this group for years, and I'm very protective of our group and the energy that we create together inside of it. So I feel like it's really important that it feels aligned for you and for us, for the group. I speak for the group. So we don't necessarily have to hop on a call, but that is always an option for you as well. If you like to hop on the wait list and get information first before everybody else does, that link for you is below. All right, today's guest, you guys, I'm talking with Jenn Cohen today, and we have a really interesting and awesome conversation all about how to know like these 5 signs, and actually probably a little bit more than 5 signs that you're not paying attention to your intuition and how to get back into alignment with that. After a life-changing experience in her 20s, Jenn explored how intuition could shape her life and her career. She spent 27 years in the entertainment industry, and she found that intuitive decisions often led to success. And so now, as an intuitive consultant, she helps individuals and organizations as well unlock their potential, gain clarity, and achieve their goals through practical intuition based strategies. So her work fosters growth, creativity, and purpose in both personal and professional realms. Jenn and I are super aligned. We have a phenomenal conversation about all things intuition, how to really hone in on that, how to know when you're not operating from a place of intuition, and how that really relates to strategies in business as well. So let's dive in. Hey, Jenn, thanks so much for being here today. I'm really excited to chat with you about intuition and 5 signs that we're ignoring our intuition. I wanted to just start really quick, though, dive right in and find out like what brought you to this journey with intuition.
Yeah. First of all, it's great to be here. It's so nice to be on your show. I love it. I'm a regular listener and get a lot from not only you but your guests. So thank you for what you're doing. Um, how I got here. I have always been intuitive. I've had the curiosity of things that might not necessarily be what we're taught to see and what we're taught to look at. And I was fortunate enough to have a family that encouraged that, even though they were educators and in the education, teachers and counselors. They really supported my way of looking at the world. And I had uh, a tragedy with my dad passing when I was at a young age. And he came to me the night of his funeral and with a signal of some lights flashing. I was lying on his side of the bed, and it was pitch black in the room, and was just kind of calling out, and the light flashed on and off and on and off. And I asked if that was him. The light flashed on and off and on and off. And that really signaled to me that there were, I knew on some level that there was something that we couldn't see, touch, taste, hear, feel. And that's our sixth sense. And that was my entry point really into trusting in that in a way that I could see physically.
Yeah, no, I love that because it was like sort of like one of those undeniable, like, okay, is this really happening? I'm interested too. Like, had you had glimmers of things like that happen to you before that, and you were just sort of like, eh.
Yeah, yeah. It was great to have a supportive family, but as with all of us, we're taking cues from our culture, we're taking cues from other children at that time. And, I would say something and I kind of get like a funny look, and that stays with you. And so there was doubt, and I wasn't always ready to, speak up about that. And there was a part of me that would then say, "Oh, I'm an introvert," or people would say, "She's an introvert, she's an introvert." And once I was able to have full trust in that knowing, it was like, I'm an introvert around people that I don't really share this knowledge with, but I'm pretty much an extrovert when I get around people that I can talk about this really freely and openly. And so it was finding my tribe, it was finding people. And then I discovered I worked 27 years in the entertainment industry. And I discovered that, I could connect with people on this in a way that they were timid to bring it up. And so having that trust, having that belief, having that knowing allowed doors to open for others to feel more comfortable talking about it, which is so gratifying.
Yeah, no, I get that. I totally get that. Like, I definitely self-identify as, I think I am an introvert at the heart of all of this, but it makes a huge difference. I think it's more of just that I just don't have maybe patience or desire for small talk about silly, weird, you know what I mean? It's like, no,
Yep.
let's get into like the real stuff. What's really
Totally.
happening here? Like when people, I'm like, okay, I can go there with you. That sounds fun to me. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah. So I want to, all right, let's get into this whole the signs you're ignoring your intuition, because I hear this a lot from people, from my clients and creatives. A lot of creative women that I work with are like, I don't know if this is my intuition or if this is fear or if this is like there's so much overthinking, right? With
Hmm.
these creative, spicy brains and anxiety or whatever it is got going on. And so it can be really hard for a lot of people to discern. So
Yeah.
what do you think those signs are?
Yeah. So before we get into the science, it's really important to recognize, in our brain we have two hemispheres, the left hemisphere, the right hemisphere. The left hemisphere is critical thinking. It's linear based. Intuition can only live in the present moment. That's on the right hemisphere. And that's the creative thinking brain. The left hemisphere is it's really fear-based. It seeks differences and it's looking for ways to judge and to be very cautious. And then the right side of the brain, the creative thinking, where intuition lives, only lives in the present moment and it's very expansive. It's also nonverbal. Um, and it's flexible, it's compassionate, it's imaginative, and it's curious. And so it's a good starting point to remember that we have these two hemispheres of our brain that are really looking to connect with one another and work as a whole brain. And what happens a lot of times, in especially the environment that we're living in right now, is that the left brain, because it's pretty much where society has taught us to operate from, takes over. And it becomes that portion that is the bully of your right brain. And so this can show up in anxiety, when we're anxious. When I was in my corporate job towards the end, when I knew that I was really ready to get out, but just needed a little bit more time for myself to make that jump. Irritability. Oh my God. I would say
Mhm.
everything is so irritating. And that was something I remember when I finally decided to take the leap. I said to a friend, I said, I'm just so tired of being irritated every moment. Prone to making mistakes. Carelessness is another sign. That's moving too fast. That's kind of, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. Your left brain has taken over. You're looking at either, something in the future or worrying about something in the past, ruminating on that. You're not in the present. Short-tempered, being aggressive. That's a good sign that you're not in your intuition. um, inability to inability to communicate effectively is also a good sign that you're not in your intuition. And the last one, which I think that's six, but I'll say it anyway, is when you're stressed out
Yeah. And burnt out, right? Like that
and burnt
like
out.
level of burnt outness.
Yeah,
That is a lot. And so, yeah, I mean, it can be really hard too, especially like you said, we can't control very much of what's going around, around us and in the world. We can control our actions and reactions and things like that. But I feel like a lot of us we do tend to like default to that reactive state a lot as well, especially if you're online a lot. And like you said, like that left brain, we have been sort of programmed to value it, I think,
mhm,
in just in various ways, right? And how do you then, okay, so we can recognize, right? Like, so if
yep,
these are some of the things that are coming up for you. Um, then you start to recognize, all right, I'm I might not be operating from the place of my highest good, let's say. What would you suggest as that next step in diving deeper into that?
sure, yeah. The first, like you just mentioned, is it's awareness. And that you've probably had this, or your listeners have probably had this, where, you have had five fights imaginary fights before you become aware, like, oh my gosh, I just went through 5 different scenarios with different, things or people, and I'm super tense. It's awareness. This happens to me in the shower, where especially when I was about to go into work, where it's like, if this person says this, da 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 da, and I would catch myself, and the quicker I practice, or the more I practiced it, the quicker I would catch myself. So then it went down to maybe 3 fights, and then it went down to a half of a fight. And how I would combat that just in the moment very quickly is I would just switch. And we all know about gratitude. It's out there. Everyone talks about it. And there's a reason that everyone talks about it, is it just quickly gets you out of this kind of fight or flight state. And it gets you in that present moment. So just in the shower, for example, it was, I'm so grateful for this warm water. I'm so grateful for this soap. I'm so grateful for my arm that I'm lathering up. I mean, it can just be really, quick, and then it just gets you out of that. So that's one way to get out. And then for like we mentioned carelessness, or making careless mistakes. That's simply slowing down. And our breath is our greatest asset. The body follows the mind, and the mind follows the breath. So if we can just take some clear breaths, and what I really like to do is make an audible sigh as I breathe out. It kind of vibrates in your body and allows your body to know we're clear, we're good here, and it gets you out of that fight or flight state. Short-tempered, aggressive. Um, you might just need to go outside for a minute. Nature is, I say it's the ultimate sage. Being outside, if it's a sunny day, just basking in the sun, kind of feeling it on your skin. It allows you, again, the pause in order to get away from the irritable situation that you're in, and allows you to focus on nature, focus on what's around you, and take some deep breaths. And when you're able to do that, there's a signal that I like to do, which is I just kind of call in my intuitive self. And as I breathe in, it's almost like you see a light coming down through your head and into your throat, and then into your heart, and like you can just sigh out. But then you can, I use a phrase, and it says, we're here, and we would like to share with you. And in that moment, it's kind of like you've given over your frustration, and you're trusting what's coming through is for your greatest, highest good.
Mm-hmm.
And that phrase really resonates.
Yeah, that's very powerful. I think that's a really great um, strategy for people to think about, because I think it's a little bit, and I love how you put we're
Mhm,
here, right?
mhm.
Because it takes like you and your ego and like the self out of the equation truly. I mean, yeah, we're wanting to tap in to that, you know, deeper, deeper part, the I like to call it my higher self, or but at the end of the day, like, yeah, there's that allowing, I think, is just really important, because we do live in such a reactive state a lot of the time. It's really hard to be intentional with that desire to receive the
Yes.
information. And you kind of have to be, sometimes you have to be really intentional with yourself about that, and just kind of stop. I always tell people, like come to Jesus moment with my unconscious mind, in my closet, like when the self doubt or the imposter syndrome stuff starts kicking in. It's like, okay, hang on. And
Right.
you know,
Right.
in
Who's
that
talking
moment,
here?
yeah, exactly. Like, okay, but so I like that we're here, right?
Yeah.
So I know a lot of my listeners, and myself included, as a creative, just in general, you can deal with a lot of self-doubt and imposter syndrome, especially if you own your own business and you're out there doing all the things and trying to be the voice of everything in your business, right? So it can be really hard to wear that, a lot of pressure. How can we tell the difference between what is something that is really fear, like what is actually, you know, something super fear-based, self-doubt, and our intuition? Like, what's
Sure.
a really good way to discern that?
Sure. So when you're in fear, you can notice in your body a constriction. You can notice your maybe shoulders are going up, but everything feels really tight. Um, and it's almost like, you see animals that are in fear, they'll almost stop for a minute and like just pause and kind of look around. And that's the feeling that we feel when we are in fear. And when you're in your intuitive state, it feels very expansive. It's confidence and clarity versus fear and uncertainty. That's probably the best way to see it. And if you still can't really, well, is this confidence? Is this confidence?
Mhm.
Um, you know, there might be there also can be a little bit of hesitation if you're a little bit scared about moving out of your comfort zone.
Mhm.
And so that's a different kind of fear because there's almost like a little bit of excitement in there as well. But fear of like you're paralyzed where you can't move forward, that's very constrictive. That is telling you, okay, you have a story that you are continuously telling yourself that is not only making the fear um, palpable. But every time that you tell that story to yourself, you're tripling and doubling and quadrupling the fear. And so when we can catch that quickly and we can say, it's almost like you're making a U-turn back to yourself, and you can test yourself, and you can say, like I would say, Jen, um, is that fear true? Okay. So if I decide to leave this job right now, XYZ is going to happen. And while I was leading up to leaving my job, I went through that stage, and I probably could have left about 2 to 3 years before I did.
Mhm.
But when it was time to go, my intuition was like, absolutely not. That fear, like I had feared and like, thought of all of the things keeping me back for those 2 to 3 years. But when my intuitive self was like, now is the time, go, it was I did not pause for 1 second. And it was the perfect time.
Yeah. And I feel like, I kind of always mention this to people too, is like there's power in the piece, right? Like, so if you can tune into it and it feels like you said, any sort of resistance, any sort of constriction, it's not it's not really the thing, right? That like,
Mm.
your intuition, like you said, I really believe, but also don't you think too that the more you, just like anything else, the more you trust it, the more you really build that muscle of
Mhm.
intuition, um, the easier it is to listen or at least lean into as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In the knowing, there is no question. There's no question attached. Knowledge doesn't operate in language.
Mhm.
And so we give language to it. And so as you practice and as you learn the intuitive language, it's talking to you in a way that is just as clear as words are, and as the typical language that we talk. And so it becomes where if people are questioning you on that, it's just kind of like, oh, well, that's how I'm going to do it. That's me, and it becomes less resistant of how they're going to react to how you move. And that's where your intuition is looking for your trust, because how I move might not be how somebody else moves. And that's what's so beautiful about our intuition is it's custom to us. It reaches us in the most profound ways that we are able to get ourselves into a place to receive it. It's not really our job to hunt down our intuition.
Mhm.
it's our responsibility to put ourselves in a place to receive it. And that's very specific to you. For me, it's nature. Some people music, some people dancing, some people singing, some people drawing, some people reading. But that how you are able to get yourself in that place, you will know when you get that signal, when you get that sign, and it is beyond doubt.
Yeah. And I think too, right? The key there is to notice it when it happens so that you can really train your unconscious mind to want more of that as well. Because it's like, oh, okay, let me stop for a second though. Because I feel like there's been so many times I know in my own life where those moments have really sometimes happened and I just sort of like brush it over, right? It's like, you might even be busy or whatever. And when you reflect back though, you realize, oh no, no, that was actually a really powerful moment. And so your intention is behind it is really important, I feel like, as well. And noticing these pieces. So that's why one of the things that I like to do, nature is definitely one of my strategies as well for, honing that intuition. But reflecting at the end of the day is really important for me because I do so much in a day. I'm one of those people, like I just do a lot of things. A lot of us do. And even though you're doing a lot of things, sometimes you can feel like you didn't really accomplish that much or do that much. But if you are very intentional about, no, no, let me just think about what actually happened today. And, maybe it was this one moment that came through with when I was working with one of my clients or something. And taking out my highlighter and highlighting that for myself is really important because I want more of that, right? I want to focus more on that. And our unconscious mind is going to believe whatever we tell it. So if I'm constantly telling it, gosh, I really didn't accomplish that much today. Well, it's going to look for more of that. And I want to be intentional about the things that I did actually spend time on and when these moments specifically happen because I would like to strengthen that. So I think
Yes,
that could be a really important piece of that as well. But let's talk a
absolutely.
little bit about like I know you work with organizations and in some of the work that you do, um, specifically on how intuition like can be used as a strategy even for branding, for marketing.
Mhm.
I have a lot of
Sure.
people who own their own business listening to this.
Yeah,
Yeah, how's
yeah.
that going to play?
So the creative side of our brain, I mean, it is such a superpower for work, for communication, for inspiration, for imagination. You cannot create what you can't imagine. And that lives on the side of our intuitive brain, of our intuitive self. And our intuitive self is constantly knocking on our door. It's again, it's where we're putting our attention. Um, and in business, a lot of times, and I'll say corporate, my experience was hard skills. And that is very, very left critical thinking. And we need that. Trust me, we need that. And what I'm talking about, it's not saying, okay, left hemisphere go offline. No, it's saying there's room for the right hemisphere to come on. And it's much more the feminine side of the house. And as we're moving into this much more divine feminine time and space, um, the value of what the right brain has to offer, it's not only powerful in and of itself, but what it can um, guide and help our left brain come online for. And so it's almost like the engine doesn't have to rev so much when we can incorporate mindfulness tactics, when we can incorporate things that in the past people would call lazy, and unproductive. When we are able to put just as much value on that as the preparation, the PowerPoints, the endless meetings, when we can start to balance that out, we can not only become more imaginative, more efficient, more effective in how we communicate with people, we can have more hours in our day, essentially. because we're just not ruminating and we're not going over the same thing. And so that's what I when I work with companies, it's it's really, it depends on the company, but sometimes people are like, that's so woo-woo. And, and it's just like, okay, is that, tell me your experience with woo-woo, and working in the entertainment industry, a lot of people say, well, I see dead people. It's the sixth sense, and it's just like, okay, no, nope, we're going to redefine, what intuition is. And we're redefining it in a way that it's not scary and that you all know that you have it. It's not something that witches have. It's not something that women have. So it's really, I'll have people say to me, well, what if you don't have intuition? And that's the first debunk. And so it's really an education, and it's also it's very easy to tap into with the correct tools.
Yeah.
And when you do, and this is kind of going back to the previous question, I always like to say to people, when you get that hit, when you get that inspiration, when you get that download, say thank you more, please.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that noticing of it, because you have to like do that. You have to be intentional with, oh no, I would love more of that. Like that was amazing. Being appreciative and grateful for it in the moment too, like you said before, is a super big one for me.
Yeah.
And taking a minute to recognize that. I think a lot, like for a long time, for myself personally, I noticed that I was having these intuitive downloads, and all of these things would drop in, let's say in my late teens, early 20s. And because of my own upbringing and programming, and that really does come into play a lot. I know you said you were brought up in a very open place with that, but a lot of people aren't.
Hmm.
And it can be very suppressed. Not saying that, doesn't mean you have to come from a bad experience with your family. It just could mean that it's not understood and not valued in that way. And that was, it's very much, or, brought up like myself in very strict religious sort of upbringings. And so there isn't like a whole lot of room for that in that space. Um, so I always remember feeling like the black sheep, like a fish out of water.
Yeah.
Why was I always questioning the things that I was taught? I was like, but what if there is? And so I think a lot of times in that space in my life, in that time in my life, uh, it was easy for me to just sort of sweep it away and ignore it. But the minute you sort of the minute you sort of like notice it, it can also open up the floodgates, which
Hmm.
can also feel a little scary to people.
Sure.
And I went through that as well. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. And so I do think it's important to um, be very intentional about that, and to let people know too, and you probably see this a lot, is you can discern, you can determine at what rate you would like that to come in as well.
Absolutely. It's like you can turn up the volume, you can turn down the volume. You're in control of
Yeah.
that. Hmm.
And I feel like a lot of people don't think that way, at least when they're just sort of like dipping their toe into all of this.
Yeah.
They kind of have this feeling of, I'm not going to be in control, but that's not true. And you are able to, like you said, turn up the volume or not and decide.
Yes. Yes. And for me, what I always do is I call in the highest, most loving vibrations.
Yeah.
I'm not I'm not here to pick up anybody's negative energy. I'm not here to pick up just low energy. We all have had those energy vampires that just kind of suck us dry. That's not what our intuition is there to serve us with. And so by understanding that my intuition is coming in with the highest, most loving, most beneficial, you know, uh, messages for the greatest good, that's you can already feel the difference there. And that's what's going to come in because that is what you are asking for. And they will not give you anything that you are not asking for.
Yes, exactly. And it's so important to really trust that, that level of I am always taken care of, I am always supported,
Yeah.
uh, and really believing that, so that it kind of does, it gets you through those periods. But I mean, I can definitely understand there being moments of a little bit of, fearfulness happening when it feels like you don't maybe have that control, or especially like in the example you spoke of in the very beginning with the lights kind of flashing on and off, right? I've
Hmm.
had some seriously intense otherworldly
Hmm.
experiences in my
Hmm.
life. And one in particular, it happened at a place where I felt like I was ready for it. And I was like, no, no, this is good. I'm good. And then it amped up immediately, quickly, and a lot. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm not okay with that.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't mean that much.
like, oh no, 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 no. I don't need to hear words. So like, it was like an actual audible voice. Like it's kind of a long story, but basically, yes, it was like,
Hmm.
I'm good with this. Yes. Show me more. I'm ready. Whatever. And then it was like, okay, hang on. I'm not quite there yet.
Hmm.
And so it's okay to, you know, um, feel like you can, do that in the moment as well.
Yeah.
And I think that I feel like a lot of people have had experiences, whether they're subtle, whether they're not so subtle. Um, and it can trigger, that feeling of out of control, and I'm
Hmm.
unable to, because us as humans, we crave certainty, and we want control, some of us more than others for
Yeah.
various reasons. And so it can feel very, very scary. But what would you say, to someone listening who is just sort of like dipping their toe in that, and, looking for ways to really dive deeper into it in a way that feels safe and um not quickly, basically, right?
Yeah, sure, sure. It's funny. I have a story kind of similar to you, but I was in a room with two other people
Mhm.
and something happened and they ran out of the room and I was like, "Oh, that's so cool." So
Mhm.
I mean, it can happen,
Mhm.
you're just at different stages of,
Yeah.
how I took that messaging versus how they did. And you set the tone and um it's really to answer your question, for people that are starting out kind of slow, I would do this work in nature. I would do this work in near the ocean. I would do this work outside. I would really give yourself the spaciousness to feel the elements. And again, I'm not saying go into like a torrential rainstorm or anything like that, like a very peaceful outside experience and calling in that way. And it's just a natural way for you to be open to what's coming in. And when you decide to tune into your intuitive self, to your deeper self, to your higher self, to the collective consciousness, let's say, uh, you can put parameters around that. You can say, I really would like a gentle message. I would like, you can even say, if you want signs, I'm looking for a sign of a blue butterfly.
Mhm.
And that blue butterfly can be a cartoon, it could be an animated, it could show up anywhere. It could be a painting that you pass by, but those are really, um, you know, um, very calm ways to enter into this field, to know that your intuitive self is always there to help you. It's always there to show you the way. And it might not be exactly the way that your ego is expecting it to show up, but it is the way that your spirit is guiding you to that answer. And if you might not be just ready universally to receive it, it might introduce you to somebody who then takes you on the path to getting that answer. And that's a very gentle way that's not so harsh or jolting to the body.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, go at your own pace. I feel like, you know, there's definitely some times where you want to possibly push yourself out of your comfort zone, and uh, growth, happens outside of it for sure. But also, if it's going to feel super scary, it's probably going to have, you know what I mean? Like that's not a great state
Right.
to continue to stay in, right? You don't want it to trigger some stuff. Rooting back down into that peacefulness, I
Mhm.
think, is a really important like factor. And so, what are some ways? I know you've talked about like clearing the static in some of your work, right? Like
Mhm.
so. I know we talked about nature and things like that, but what are the biggest sources of the static, do you think? And then how can like entrepreneurs remove that?
It's the stories we tell ourselves, It is, oh my gosh, what story are you telling yourself? Like that, to me is I can fall prey to that very, very, very quickly. And I can find things that support that very quickly. And so um, there's mantras that I do every single day, and they become like exercises, they become the practice. Um, when I notice myself um, overeating, that will be a trigger of like, okay, wait, what am I trying to avoid? What am I trying to stuff down? That's a really good, all of these things that we are like, oh, I want to stop doing that. I want to stop doing that. Um, Many times they're great teachers in what we have to learn. And they're showing us, oh, you know what? That's just a symptom that I need to pay much more attention to um, my ego trying to get in the way of keeping me protected. And I put that in quotes,
Yeah.
because intuition has no reason to keep you protected. It's not here for smallness. And that greatness is the big leap that we all, we're like, oh God, that seems so scary. But it's really, for everything that I've learned, it's the scare that I have created in my head. And it's the judgment of people that I don't necessarily care what they think.
Yeah.
And then it goes into, oh God, but then I'm going to be alone. I'm not going to have any friends. No one's going to be able to take care of me. And then that's that U-turn back where it's like, well, how's that working out for me now?
Mm-hmm.
You know? Okay. I'm kind of just I'm living in this protected small state so that I can continue this relationship. Hmm, that doesn't seem real right. And once that flowing of thought comes in, rather than go ahead, grab that snack, sit on the couch and binge Netflix, again, totally fine to do sometimes. Don't get me wrong, love it. But when it becomes that pattern that's keeping you away from what your intuition is trying to come through for you, that's when the anxiousness, the irritability, the carelessness, the stress comes in, just to circle back to how we started.
Yep.
Um, but those things that we tend to do to soothe ourselves, and we've been taught to soothe ourselves, um, can really create that static for our intuition. So it's finding those new ways to soothe ourselves: a bubble bath, a walk, music, a good talk, a deep talk with a friend, a fellow introvert, but those are the things. And so it's an awareness, and then it's the willingness to just kind of call it out. And it doesn't mean that you have to stop it right that second. The work is just calling it out at that moment.
Yeah. I feel like that is the most important piece of it sometimes too, because like um especially if you're living in that hypnotic state of just going about the motions and having all of these, like like we were talking about in the beginning, the symptoms of not listening, to the intuition, all these things are going to happen. And yeah, that self-soothing, all of these quote unquote unhealthy things that like you've had the conscious awareness that they're not leading you to your best, highest good. And it is just a little bit easier to continue doing it, to stay on that loop because, now it's a habit as well, but also it's that numbing, right? It's the
Right.
running, it's the fight or flight. It's the flight, like literally like sort of like running away from it and numbing to it. And in the moment, and I can speak to it because I've done it myself. I know how it feels. It can feel incredibly uh scary and really uncomfortable to call it out
Mhm.
and then to sit with it. But it's also, I think, so important to remember, if you're listening, like calling it out, noticing it without judgment is this really big piece. That's really
Yes.
hard for a lot of us that have a
Yes.
lot of like I call it the nasty interceptor, right? So that is not normally, first of all, it's not your intuition, but it's definitely not even like you. That's
Right.
like
Hmm.
those are other people, usually from your past or instances or circumstances that have happened that got stuck in there. And so sometimes our first, gut reaction is to beat ourselves up for it, especially if there's like something that you've been trying to do and you want to do and is going to move you forward, and yet you feel very, very stuck and paralyzed and you can't seem to do it, especially if it comes into terms with if it's related to putting yourself out there, being judged, perceived, and all of those things, which is super common, especially with women entrepreneurs in the space. It can be really easy for you to just beat yourself up for it and be like, just get over it. You suck. Like, why am I, that loop of destructiveness. And so noticing that in that moment as well is, I think, a really powerful move because it is just what it is. It just is. It doesn't have to be good or bad. It doesn't have to be anything. It's like what you put on it is what it's going to be. So noticing it without judgment, like taking that charged emotion out of it and just being like, huh, that's
Hmm.
really interesting. I
Hmm.
wonder where that comes from,
Hmm.
and like allowing yourself to really lean into it and lean into the uncomfortableness and sitting with it. That is something that a lot of people have a hard time doing, but there's so much power in
So
that.
much power, so much power. And I'll add, if you can, catch that and sit with it for a moment and hear what your ego is telling you, which is, let's just say, like, you're lazy. I'm just going to use that as an example. And then you can say, what is a higher vibration of this? Oh, you know what? You're self-soothing, like, let's just say,
Mhm.
you're resting. There's a higher way to look at that, in a much more compassionate way, like you were talking about, than to look at it. And then it creates this space where it's like, oh, you know what I could also go journal. I could get up and, go take care of this. But it doesn't come down so hard on yourself that you don't want to do anything else. Yeah,
Yeah. And the mantra that you mentioned, like the mantras, that can be a really powerful way to like, first of all, many things, but like also specifically deal with that sort of lower vibration story that's being told.
absolutely. Yeah,
Because your unconscious mind is going to believe whatever you tell it. And so if you have a mantra that you are like, it's a non-negotiable for you that you either use in the morning or at night or whatever, something that is just, it's going to embed, like, what are you telling yourself and how are you embedding that? That's, I think, a really big just piece of it to stay on track in general.
absolutely.
Yeah. So
Absolutely. Yeah. And a hack that I like to do, and I don't know if you do it as well, is record into my voice memos
mhm.
and then listen back, before I go to bed. And I
Yeah.
say it 3 times. And there's something about hearing yourself talk back to yourself, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. My husband has done that. He's an actor, and he's used to like hearing the sound of his voice because I feel like a lot of people, when I tell people like, get this mantra down to where you want it and then record it. And they're like, oh God, like, no, I can never like listen to the sound of my voice. And I
Yeah.
totally understand that at first because it's like, it's going to trigger some other things, right? But there is a lot of power in that. I mean, my husband swears by it. Like, honestly, he likes to do it when he wakes up because, and I think it's a great time to do it too. Like,
Yeah,
find what
absolutely.
works for you and your
Yeah.
rhythm. For
Yeah.
me, I do like it before night because I like to program my unconscious to do what I want it to do while I'm sleeping. Like,
Yep.
okay, here's what we're going to work on.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's just the way I like
It's
to
so
do it.
cool. Yeah.
And you can tell it
Yeah.
to do all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I also, though, I don't have an issue sleeping. Like that's not an issue for me. Like, he's not that, he has issues like sleeping. And so for him, coming out of a deeper sleep and into theta is like a perfect time for him to like put his headphones in and then just listen to his mantra. And I've talked about that a lot on like my social and also here on the podcast. And I've heard, some feedback from people saying that was a really good tip. Thank you for that. Because you may not think about it on your own to like just record it, and you may not want to, but just try it. Just try it and see how it feels. And listen, no one else is listening to it but you. Like remove
That's
the
right.
judgment. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's right. It's an exercise in and of itself
Mhm.
of catching yourself say, "Oh, I hate my voice." Wait, no.
Mhm.
There,
My
that is a
voice is just
perfect.
my voice,
Right, right.
like
Your voice
not
is,
good or
you
bad.
have a voice. Like how beautiful.
Exactly. I'm grateful for it. I'm glad
Yeah.
I can speak. I have language, like,
Yeah.
and something even very small to say good
Yeah.
about it and just keep doing it too, because you will become desensitized to all of that. Like the more you do it, but like you said, it's a good exercise just in general and in that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love
Yeah.
that.
So if you're saying that that's the barrier to doing it, there's your work.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here. This is super fun. I love going into all of this and meeting like-minded people as well. I know you work with people in all different capacities. So where do you like to connect with them? I'll put all of this in the show notes so that people can find you.
Fantastic. My website's a great place to check me out. Jenn, Jenn, Cohen, Cohen, intuitive.com. And I'm also on Instagram at Jenn Cohen Intuitive.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you again. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Jen. That was awesome. That was so insightful. I loved those reminders myself. It can be really hard sometimes when the world is crazy and when things are busy and you just have a lot going on. It's super easy to fall back into those old patterns, habits, programs. I have found myself really having to, double down on all things mindset right now. And I think this was a really awesome reminder for many of us, including me. Because remember, your intuition is never going to feel fearful. It's not going to make you feel constricted. It's going to feel expansive. It might feel uncomfortable, but you can see that there's growth on the other side of it. Like you can feel it and there's power in the peace, right? Like really tune into your own intuition. Make it a habit to really strengthen that and to get really good at knowing what feels good, what doesn't, and trusting yourself because you really do know. So whether it's like a personal decision or something to do with your business, your intuition is there to help you and to guide you. And it's not something to be afraid of. I loved the little strategies that she gave us in this episode. And I hope that you guys found this super valuable. As always, if you did, let me know. You can always rate and review the podcast at ratethispodcast.com/Renee Bowen. That's the easiest way to do it because you can just access any platform from that link. But you could do it from inside of whatever platform you're listening to or watching as well. Your feedback is so very appreciated. Thanks again for joining me here, and I hope you have a beautiful week. Love you. Bye.